I was a teenager when I first visited Hawaii Volcanoes National Park with my father in 1960. The Kapoho and Kilauea eruptions, with their spectacular fountains, had just ended. I remember climbing around steaming vents and hiking across fresh lava fields. I have been photographing here ever since, first in stills and then later in video as well. The current eruption of Kilauea began on January 3rd, 1983. At our house in the town of Volcano, some 9 miles away, we could easily hear the roar and feel a gentle vibration. At night, residents and visitors would watch these beautiful fountains from several locations. Geologists from the Hawaiian Volcano Observatory constantly monitored the eruption, and photographers like myself, Jim Griggs, Byrne Pettit, Dorian Wiesel, and others worked with them or hiked out on our own to photograph and to just be there. Geologists Ed Wolf and Dick Moore are picking their way through a hostile landscape to collect samples and measure the temperature of the lava. This environment is an ever-changing mixture of swirling dust, volcanic fumes, smoke, hot shifting winds, and drifting tephra. There is a constant, loud, low, earth-trembling roar. The terrain is mostly cinder-covered, replete with burning trees, jumbled old a'a fields, and searing hot flows. Whenever I get this close to high fountains, I become extremely aware of the slightest changes in wind, sound, ground tremor, and radiant heat. I feel a mixture of awe, exhilaration, and terror. A change in the shape of the vent opening or a shift in the wind could leave any of us in an anoxic environment or under a deadly shower of glowing tephra and molten spatter. These flows out near the vent are really big and very fast moving. USGS photographer Jim Griggs photographs and describes what happens when they break out of their channels.
The flow coming from the tube has essentially stopped. No. Hey, Bert! Get out of here! You can leave it. Yeah.
Back about 150 meters.
We've moved back about 150 meters to the northeast of the position where we were with the time-lapse camera. When the flow through the tube stopped, it broke over the top in a very large volume.
I believe that there is no experience comparable to being in a forest at night when an a'a flow is coming through. We are in Royal Gardens subdivision on a fairly steep slope, and the flow is surging through a dense stand of tall ohia trees. The swiftly moving lava is covering trees even before they can burn. Steam escaping from their trunks adds a howl to the sounds of crackling flames, crashing branches, and rushing lava. The front of the flow is nearly 20 feet high, and incandescent blocks tumble down its face as it pushes forward.
Staying pretty much in the gully?
Yeah.
Is that Bob down there? He wants some help?
We're hanging out here at the front of the flow, waiting to see if it's going to break out.
1502 July 2nd, Warrior Street.
This surging front isn't very thick, but it's about the fastest I've seen, and it's followed closely by the rest of the flow. This is Bob Decker, scientist in charge of the Hawaiian Volcano Observatory. He's chalking the road to see how fast the flow will cover the next 10 meters. Early morning hours are my favorite here at Kilauea vent. The lava looks great, the wind is gentle, and the low-flying helicopters haven't arrived yet. Sulfur dioxide fumes are a constant problem here. Geologist Ken Hahn has just returned from the downwind side of the lake after getting badly fumed while changing film in the time-lapse camera. Looking out over the lake, we can see a series of overturns moving across the surface toward us. This is Shelly Pahoehoe, and it's a real nuisance here. As you can see, it's very brittle and hollow in the center. When walking in a line, you can never tell who is going to be the one to fall through. Sometimes the leader gets it, but other times half a dozen people can walk over an area before someone breaks through. I can't think of a worse surface to cross. This is what it's like to walk over Shelly and film at the same time. The broken lava is very sharp, and contusions are almost inevitable when you fall through. The saying goes that around Kilauea, you either wear gloves or bandages. It's May 30th, 1990, and Ken Hahn, Rob McGovern, and myself have just been dropped off on the floor of Kilauea vent, which is empty due to a pause in the eruption. We have with us a camera crew from Primetime Live, whom I think don't fully appreciate the uniqueness of our location.
You didn't get a look when you flew over? Because there's incandescent cracks and there's stuff oozing up on the surface of the lake down at the bottom, but it's just not...
That's molten lava in the bottom of the pit. It's been there since before our helicopter left, and Ken is undecided as to whether or not it means the eruption has restarted. In any case, he is eager to assure me that I won't need a sleeping bag should I wish to spend the night.
Be a great vantage point to get a restart from.
Our helicopter pilot, David Okita, picked us up about half an hour ago and dropped us off here, where this small flow has broken to the surface. I really love the color and texture of these flows that appear when the eruption restarts. These bubbles seem to form over the same spot as the flow moves past. Their thin membranes frequently shatter as soon as they cool, scattering glassy shards to the wind. At first glance, they all appear alike, but upon closer inspection, no two are identical. Bubbles this delicate are an uncommon sight on most lava flows, and I'm happy for this opportunity to photograph them. It is an incredibly hot afternoon. This is due in part to the fact that we are standing on a slowly moving flow in order to get a good shot of these accretionary lava balls as they come down the channel. Rob McGovern is throwing sticks into the flow so that we can measure its speed. The radiant heat off the lava is intense, preventing him from getting close enough to throw in this large branch. As the pieces travel down the channelway, they enter a tube of a known length. By timing them until they appear as flames at the far end, we have established that they are moving along at about 2.5 miles an hour. It's a pleasant surprise to run into this flow. We're shooting this at full wide angle from about 20 feet. By sitting on a log, I am able to get under the worst of the very intense heat so characteristic of flows. Notice how the sides of the flow solidify into a channel for the fluid center. This is a typical forest scene after a flow has passed close by. It's June 22nd, 1989, and we are in a grove of llama trees just east of the Wahaula Visitor Center. The National Park Service is attempting to prevent flows from overrunning the structure by spraying the oncoming lava with water. The hope is that the water will cool and solidify the flow front, forming a barrier that will divert the main body of the flow. While the water is successful in causing the surface of the lava to skin over, it seems unable to extend its cooling to the flow interior, which readily breaks out once the water is removed. This fire crew is trying to fight a holding action along a 100-foot wide front. The limiting factor is water. The delivery system is simply incapable of pouring enough of it onto the flow to completely and permanently solidify the front. In Iceland some years ago, an important seaport was saved after millions of gallons of seawater were sprayed onto the sides of an advancing flow. Every available pump was put in service, and heavy streams of seawater were played onto the lava day and night. Here, this is all the water there is, and at this point, it doesn't look very promising. I think the park is looking at this more as an experiment than as a serious attempt to save the building. I just ducked into the office to get this last shot, but I see that Jim Martin, the chief ranger, has beat me to it. These fire crews are a real credit to the park in their dedication to their job, even in the face of an unrelenting onslaught of lava.
"3:56 p.m. Floor joists have just ignited."
It's interesting being under here with the floor on fire, but I don't think I'm going to stay much longer. It's always been nice to come back here to Wahaula and sit in the shade after a hot afternoon out on the flows. I can already tell I'm going to miss it. Maurice and Katja Kraft, the world's two foremost volcano photographers, have been pictured so often wearing silver suits that many people just expect all volcanologists to use them. Ken Hahn's got one on this afternoon because he's going to have to stand right beside a flow for several minutes while he measures its temperature. By and large, though, the suits are rarely used around here. I tried one out several years ago and found that I could walk through moderate spatter unscathed. The problems came when I got caught in a fume cloud because the face mask fogged up and the suit was too cumbersome to run in. Boy, it's sure scorching out here today. Although it's only the end of April 1990, it feels like the hottest day of summer. We're picking our way between flows, trying to avoid methane explosions and falling coconut trees in this forest on the south side of Kalapana town. Lava has been slowly destroying this village over the last few months, and geologists like Ken Hahn and Tari Maddox have to traverse these searing flows as they map the seaward progress of the lava. Sometimes the lava seems to move capriciously, torching some houses and bypassing others. Most flows down here on the coastal plain are slow-moving like this one, and geologists are able to get close enough to use these instruments to measure its temperature. Much of the mapping is done from the air because one can cover a great distance in a short time, and it's the only way to see the entire flow field. Although our primary work here is to provide video documentation to volcanologists and civil defense personnel, it is impossible not to become caught up in the human drama that is playing out as people's homes and lives are overrun by lava. In the aftermath of most natural disasters like floods, fires, and hurricanes, one can still locate the street on which one lived, and rebuilding is usually an option. Not so with lava flows. Everything becomes covered by many feet of hard rock, which even weeks later may be too hot to touch. And lava has just reached the ocean after torching the pavilion. It's hard to believe this was a shady roadway only days ago. Now everything is either burned or buried, and even Kaimu Bay with its famous coconut grove has been nearly obliterated by this awesome force of nature. It's February 18th, 1992, and this is a new outbreak on the west side of Pu'u'o'o Cone. We got here just a few minutes ago after a 4-hour hike. We are looking down on a line of small dome fountains that are slowly being drowned by flows from above. I got a call from geologist Jack Lockwood about 9 last night. He said that as he drove up to the park, he could see a bright glow out on the East Rift Zone. A few phone calls later, I was able to determine that a significant breakout, which is being called Episode 50, had occurred around dusk. By the time I tried to line up a helicopter, I couldn't find anyone who would fly before 8 a.m., and I wanted to be out here by dawn. Fortunately, I found 3 geologists who were willing to help carry equipment, and we began hiking from the Manu'ulu trailhead around 1 a.m. This is Dorian Wiesel. Over the years, he has added a lot of interest to my shots by being right in the hottest places. Here he's walking up the main tube. I took a look over there a few minutes ago, but found the heat to be absolutely unbelievable. What I really didn't like was feeling the ground actually pulse from the surging lava beneath my feet. Even out here, 20 feet away, I can feel a quiver. The crust on the channel wall back there looks like it's going to tip right in, so I think we'd better get out of here in case it does. I noticed cracks forming in the roof of this tube a few minutes ago. There it goes. USGS geologists Maggie Mangan and Christina Helliker are going out to get a lava sample. The trick is to leave it in long enough to get a nice glob of lava, but not so long that the cable becomes stuck to the channel wall. They've picked up 2 good samples so far and are now going to try for a third. This time they seem to have hooked the Big Island. I have the same problem every time I go fishing. We are over on the west side of the flows now. The vent we were just standing beside is in the center of the picture, and the cinder cone towering above is Pu'u'o'o. Although episode 50 lasted only 2 weeks, episode 51 soon started up very nearby. Throughout the whole time, and indeed even during the Kupainaha days, this lava pond inside Pu'u'o'o has been active. It seems to act as a reservoir for lava before it is erupted at the vent. The rim of the pond is frequently falling in, so standing out here is always a trip. The fumes can be really nasty and often contribute to poor visibility. Sometimes we photograph late into the evening and spend the night up here. It's a kind of spooky place. I never sleep very well. This is the lava pond that the current vent drains into. When the pond level is low, the lava pours down the steep falls. That blowing material in the foreground is called Pele's hair. It consists of very thin filaments of volcanic glass that have spun off the frothy surface of the lava and adhered to nearby rocks. We've managed to work ourselves around to where we can see back into the tube. I'm crouched down so as to avoid the worst of the heat. It's so bad out at the very edge that by the time I get the tripod set up, I feel like I'm about to ignite. I think that if I hand-hold the camera, I may be able to shoot for 30 seconds or so before the heat becomes unbearable. There. Now we've got a good view of the entire lava falls. The volume has been increasing over the past few minutes. Now, when the lava hits these boulders, it shoots outward, forming a dome-shaped spray. I'm throwing rocks in to measure the speed of the flow. The foreshortening in this view makes it look like I'm on top of the tube, when in actuality I'm standing just behind it.
You know what? I think that baby's going to break. It's already got a crack. If it breaks, it's going to start a whole new flow right here. Here it goes.
I really enjoy photographing out here late in the day. When you shoot into the low sun, you get reflections and shadows that emphasize the texture of the lava. It's also just dark enough to get good contrast between the molten and the cooled lava. The vent to my right is very fumy, and the one in front is producing the deep, loud howling sound. I have to admit that it's very scary walking out here, but I'm really curious about the noise. The sound is produced by gas rushing out from holes in this mound, which looks surprisingly like a bear's head. Right beside it on the fumy vent is a goat's head with a glowing red eye. Brad Lewis and I just woke up to find this event has broken out in full force. Up here on the slopes of Pu'u'o'o, we have a great view down toward this little cone as it tosses glowing balls of spatter into the air. the left of the cone, another vent has opened up. It is forming a levee in front. I'm very interested in this process, which is why we're down here dodging the spatter and trying to stay out of the yellow clouds of fume as they waft by. I'm working without a tripod because I have to be very mobile. As luck would have it, it seems that when I'm at full wide angle, the spatter falls right on the rim, and when I'm zoomed in tight, it flies out over my head. It's June 21st, 1992, and the eruption has been paused for several days, but I had a feeling that it might resume this morning. There's a lot of activity here. The main vent at the base of Pu'u'o'o is sending out a flow. The lava lake is very full, and down here in front of us is a flow that looks really interesting. It appears that one of the tubes from the last event refilled and then ruptured right here, producing these low dome fountains. I'd love to get over here on the ground, but the entire slope is nothing but shelly pohoihoi as far as the eye can see. It looks like the north side of this vent broke away. That's a good-sized flow gushing right out of the side. I recently picked up on using a woodworker's face shield to block the radiant heat. It works great because it covers your whole face, and especially your ears, which always seem to want to catch on fire first. This little channel overflow is forming shelly pohoihoi. It moves more like a billowing undulation of lava than a flow. Marty Lockwood and I have been out here less than half an hour, in which time the lake has risen at least 8 feet. I think it's going to begin overflowing shortly. I know the light's lousy, but this is a great example of Pelly's hair being formed by lava dragging its skin along the channel wall. First the lava sticks, but then the flow pulls it away, stretching out these long, thin strands. This is a great shot of the surface crust rolling along the channel wall. This type of spattering on the lake's surface is called gas pistoning. It's hard to judge its height from our location, but when I recently spoke with helicopter pilot Brent Traft, he told me that he had seen jets of lava spurting up over 30 feet. We're back up at the vent again. I think it's interesting to see that a dome-shaped chamber is slowly forming around it. Lava thrown out from the vent is also building up this levee. All this brown material on the back side of the vent is Pelly's hair. Like the Pelly's hair formed at high lava fountains, it is produced when globs and droplets of molten lava are pulled apart. Thin strands trail out behind the pieces, quickly cool, harden, and drift downwind. When we were standing on this surface a couple hours ago, we were on the lookout for overflows like this one. It's a little uncomfortable to see just how easily the surface breaks up under the weight of the new lava. It's mid-afternoon on October 3rd, 1992. Although episode 52 began before dawn, we only just managed to get out here now. The vent is beside these two geologists on the southwest side of Pu'u'o'o Cone. From there, the lava pours downslope till it hits a ridge where it splashes up into what looks like a fountain before once again heading downhill. Geologist Ken Han is scrambling up the side of the cone to get a better, but much hotter view. Getting dropped off by helicopter in the midst of an eruption can be dangerous, because it takes a little while to figure out just what is going on and what one's options are should the unexpected occur. Here, a large chunk of channel wall has come adrift. It could have easily blocked the channel, causing a major overflow on our side. There's a dip in the channel here that's causing a standing wave to form. I find this phenomena fascinating. It looks to me like a commercial food processor extruding pumpkin pie filling. There is always a lot of heat rising above eruptions, making for unstable air and a very bumpy ride. Although I take a lot of aerial footage, I end up using very little of it due to the excessive motion. Still, if I have to film a burning forest, I'd rather do it from the air, where I won't get hit by falling trees or blown up by methane explosions. This flow is coming down a steep slope. Part of it is on an older flow, and part is burning through an ohia forest. It is traveling so quickly that many trees have been completely surrounded without yet catching on fire. This is Kamoamoa. It is a beautiful green oasis with a newly formed black sand beach. Unfortunately, it lies right in the path of the advancing lava. This flow crossed the road here last night, November 7th, 1992, treating these pre-dawn visitors to a dose of smelly smoke from the burning asphalt. The flows are moving with surprising speed, considering the flatness of the topography. They've reached the walls of the heiau, and there is no pause in sight. The wind is really strong here today, and it's driving wildfires through the bushes. It has taken hardly any time at all to fill in this whole enclosure. In a day, the flows have cut straight through the heart of Kamoamoa and are expected to reach the ocean within the hour. Within the past few days, the flows have covered most of Kamoamoa and advanced more than 100 yards seaward. This event was photographed by USGS geologist Tari Maddox. This is one of the things that can happen when seawater gets into a lava tube. The resulting steam explosions blow molten lava hundreds of feet in all directions. These bubbles are huge, on the order of 50 feet in diameter. These bubbles are also formed by the interaction of lava and water. Most are 5 to 10 feet in diameter, though a few are as large as a 2-car garage. As they reach their maximum size, they quickly cool and shatter, blowing irregular shards and slightly curved sheets of translucent volcanic glass out into the wind. They are given the name Limu o Pele, which translates to seaweed of Pele, the Hawaiian goddess of fire. Here the wind is blowing away the steam, revealing a standing wave near the base of the flow. Water splashing onto it becomes incorporated into the lava, producing a stream of bubbles. I have long been fascinated by the motion of lava flows on nearly level ground. They often surge forward and then abruptly stop when they overextend their lava supply. When they start again, the hardened crust is frequently rafted along on top of a cushion of liquid lava. Watch the old crust atop this new flow. Behind, you can see a slope of fresh lava feeding the front. Here we have an unusual view of the fresh lava under the old crust as this sheet flow moves down the road toward us. We were lucky enough to pass in front of this flow just before it went over the sea cliff. I think it's really interesting how the surface crust flexes as it goes over the edge. If you look carefully, you can see Pele's hair sticking to its margins. To me, this looks like some strange reptile skin as it slithers down the cliff. There are many surface flows out here this morning, and as a result, it is exceptionally hot where I'm standing. A fair amount of spatter is also being blown back on shore, contributing to these large steam clouds. This is a good flow to sample from, because I can approach it from a side where I probably won't get splashed by a wave. When waves wash over the flow, the water doesn't boil off immediately because a steam cushion develops above the lava. Every time a wave comes in, it causes the lava to back up in the channel, often resulting in an overflow. As the overflow rolls up the side, it hardens on the channel wall, building it higher. It reminds me of the coil method of clay pot construction. There was a bench out in front of this littoral cone, but it fell into the ocean a couple days ago. Now the main tube shoots a 2-foot diameter stream of lava straight out into the surf. Huge spatter explosions result from this violent interaction of lava and water. These explosions can begin without warning. Recently, one person was killed and several others very badly burned in separate incidents. I think that so far in 1994, this is the most spectacular event. It is appropriate that it is being filmed here by geologist Tari Maddox, because it is similar to what she photographed several years ago. This is what some of the smaller bubbles look like in slow motion. It's January 2nd, 1996, and the activity we're seeing here comes in the aftermath of yesterday's bench collapse. Conditions are very favorable for photography this afternoon because the wind is blowing onshore and the heavy overcast causes the lava to show up better. We also have a rare side view which gives us a good look at spatter landing in the water. It is interesting to watch how the fine black tephra swirls upward with the steam clouds. We are estimating the maximum height of these bursts to be about 150 feet. It's early afternoon on February 1st, 1996, and we are flying out to these new breakouts just south of Pu'u'o'o Cone. If you look carefully near the bottom of the picture, you can see the 3 geologists who have been here since these dome fountains opened up about an hour ago. These 15 to 20 foot high dome fountains are spectacular from anywhere, but only when you get close like this can you easily see them forming. Getting the best footage is clearly a factor of being in the right place at the right time. Staying alive is a factor of not being in the wrong place at the wrong time. There is a fine shifting line between these two, and in a space of only a few seconds or feet, one can unknowingly go from relative safety to extreme danger. Here, all my senses are in a heightened state of perception, and I become acutely aware of even the slightest changes in my environment. When I can't account for a change, I never hesitate to run. Earlier today, USGS geologists detected an increase in shallow earthquakes and an actual physical swelling of the summit of the volcano. Soon the swelling became so rapid that the tilt meter used to measure it went off scale. A large pulse of magma seemed to be entering the volcano, and scientists readied for a possible summit eruption. After a few hours, however, the activity subsided, and then shortly thereafter these fountains broke out. What volcanologists would really like to know is whether this lava is new material or like the same old stuff that was being erupted before the summit event. Geologist Carl Thornburg is preparing to collect a sample of spatter which will yield this information when it is analyzed for its geochemical and mineralogical composition. The fumes are especially bad this afternoon, and without our masks it would be impossible to stay here. Geologists Jim Kawahikawa and Jennifer Reynolds are hiking out to the upper end of the vent, where Jim will use a sensitive electronic instrument to determine the amount of lava supplying these dome fountains. This is one of the more colorful eruptive events that I have photographed. During the day, lava usually looks very red because we see sunlight reflected off its surface. But as daylight fades, we begin to see more of the yellowish light produced by the lava itself. This is one of 2 smaller vents. It is difficult to approach because it is nearly encircled by shelly pohoihoi. I think this is about as close as we're going to get. This is the main flow coming from the vent that we spent the afternoon beside. As the lava cut through this forest, it produced a series of braided channels, and in places trees still stand, surrounded by tiny islands of hardened lava. It's interesting to see how widely this flow from the main vent has fanned out since we first photographed it from the air some 5 hours ago. We are now flying around the north side of Pu'u'o'o Cone. Inside, there is a very active lava lake. Lava is rising as dome fountains over here on the east side of the lake. No sooner does a thin dark crust begin to form on the surface than it is rafted westward over a lava falls and presumably into the tube that will carry it away. Up to now, we've watched geologists collect lava from a channelized flow and from a dome fountain. This is the technique Carl uses to sample from a skylight. Although lava may appear to flow like water, it is much denser. The weighted cable could be ripped from his hands if he doesn't retrieve it aggressively. For the last 3 months, lava has been flowing through tubes directly into the ocean, where volcanologist Ken Hahn has been observing new land forming.
Standing this close to the edge here always makes me a bit nervous, since I know how the cliff formed. Though not quite as impressive as the rim of Pu'u'o crater, these cliffs are far more dangerous. This aerial view really shows what major collapses have done to the coast. These embayments are called big bites by HVO volcanologists because of their conspicuous shape. It's August 18th, and I'm lucky enough to be nearby as the lava tube that feeds the bench shatters its solidified shell. The rapidly spreading lava flow covers the bench in a matter of a few minutes. Anyone unwise enough to have ventured down there for a better look would now find themselves trapped between the ocean and the advancing flow. Though sometimes the lava mimics flowing water, many of the other shapes and forms are unique to these cascades of molten rock. I really want to get down inside of this skylight to get a good look at the incandescent tube system. It's really rare to be able to see this far inside of a tube. Even though it's incredibly hot down here, it's worth it. You can really see well from here. The intense heat has remelted the rock on the tube walls, and even the roof has begun to drip.
It's almost dawn on January 30th, 1997, and I'm photographing from the west rim of Nepal crater. These fountains broke out here about 3 a.m. Around 7 last night, scientists at the Hawaiian Volcano Observatory became aware of major changes in conditions beneath the summit and east rift of Kilauea volcano. Large earthquakes were being recorded, and a strong tremor indicating the underground movement of lava was detected in this area. Now that dawn has arrived, we can see that the west wall of Pu'u'o has recently collapsed, giving the cone a decidedly bisected appearance. Fountaining has been tapering off for the past half an hour, and I think there's going to be a shutdown here pretty soon. It's now 1 p.m., and this fissure just ripped open a little east of this morning's eruption site. This is a great view of a long curtain of fire.
The noise is incredible, and the ground's shaking like crazy underneath it.
Some of these fountains are up to 100 feet high. As you can see, the lava is ponding behind these walls, which we call spatter ramparts. It's approaching 3 p.m., and most of the other fountains have shut down, but these are actually getting more interesting. If you look carefully out there in the middle, you can see ribbon spatter thrown up by the bursting gas bubbles. In late February, lava reappeared at the bottom of Pu'u'o, and by March 29th, it was seen pooling here on the west side of the cone. As it cascades from pond to pond, some streams of lava disappear into old tubes, to later emerge downslope as lava flows. It's May 30th, and there are 2 vents active on the shield that has been building for the past 2 months. Carl is waiting here out of the line of intense heat and fumes to try to snag a sample of spatter. It's pretty hard running through the deep, soft cinders on this steep slope, but big spatter bursts are always a powerful incentive. It's the morning of June 12, 1997, and Brad Lewis, Jenda Johnson, and myself are up on the north rim of Pu'u'o'o documenting the eruption of this spatter cone that has formed within Pu'u'o'o crater. The activity seems to be cycling between vigorous spattering and gentle effusion. Carl was up here early this morning and reported that it was actually fountaining. These cascades of incandescent spatter are so mesmerizing that I have to hold myself back, or I would use all my tape and batteries right here. Well, it's a good thing I restrained myself because it's equally impressive here, about 100 yards from this 50-foot high cone. Although a lot of lava is being thrown out as spatter, the majority is feeding this 12 to 15-foot high flow.
This impressive crater cone that John filmed was short-lived. By the time I saw it, it was almost completely eaten away. Brad Lewis and I are flying in on a late July morning to get a closer look at the activity in Pu'u'o'o. A massive river of lava is welling up in the vent and immediately pouring down into a hole in the crater floor. By the time I get set up on the ground, Brad has climbed to the summit of Pu'u'o'o and the lava lake is filling up. I've joined Brad high on the rim where we can actually look down into the vent as lava bubbles to the surface and fills the lava lake. We're even happier to be this high up when the lava starts overflowing the lower walls of the crater where I'd just been. These huge drain holes just opened up in the center of the lake. It looks like someone pulled the plug on a giant bathtub. The lake level is dropping very quickly now as a huge volume of lava disappears underground.
This is serious draining now. Seriously draining. It'll come out elsewhere now.
We just turned around in time to see a surge of lava overflowing from this smaller shield to the south of Pu'u'o'o. It's New Year's Day, 1998, and we're watching the vent in Pu'u'o'o overflow the inner pit onto the main crater floor. A bubble of lava breaks the crust, and within seconds, the placid pond becomes a churning dome fountain. The pond level drops rapidly as gas bubbles escape from the lava. A few hours later, the crater has refilled and the crust is beginning to convulse and fountain again. Cheryl and I just arrived at the coast shortly after a bench collapse in mid-April and found violent explosive activity in progress. Explosions are tossing spatter and football-sized bombs hundreds of feet in all directions. A large literal cone is building as red-hot debris piles up on the edge of the cliff. As dusk approaches, these explosions provide a constant fireworks display. Concealed beneath clouds of swirling steam, waves of seawater are rushing into the open tube mouth. The water flashes to steam, sending fragments of lava rocketing skyward. HVO volcanologist Dave Sherrod is cautiously approaching the cone to get a better look. Blasts from this cone are extremely unpredictable, and collecting molten samples can be hazardous. Hundred-foot-high spatter explosions dwarf Dave as he works into the night. I was standing on this levee just a few minutes ago when I heard it begin to crack. I managed to get the camera set up a few feet back in time to catch lava breaking out and rushing from the channel. As the flows advance towards me, the heat becomes intense, making it increasingly difficult to film. Even though I'm wearing protective clothing over every part of my body, I'm still going to have to move before the lava gets much closer. These big surface flows broke out as the eruption restarted after a brief pause in late May. The channels are slicing their way through the bordering forest. In some places, trees are being knocked down and burned, while in others, the lava flows around them, creating tree molds. This lava pool was recently exposed by a skylight collapse. Inside, eddies are forming downstream from the lava falls, just like in big rivers. Surges of lava coming over the falls cause powerful splashes in the skylight. It's July 10th, 1998, and the bench where lava enters the ocean is beginning to break up and disintegrate right below where I'm standing. Huge chunks are calving into the ocean and exploding at the water's edge. Nearly a third of the active bench is ripped away in a torrent of lava. The collapse carves a canyon 30 feet deep and 100 feet wide. Streams of car-sized bubbles form where lava rushes into the ocean. The rest of the bench somehow stays intact, but is still jiggling and looks very unstable. Lava comes bursting out in several places with deafening jetting noises. A series of big lava flows broke out on August 14, 1998. Jenda and I are filming the front of this slabby Pohoihoi flow as it steadily advances, burning what few islands of vegetation remain in the flow field. We need to keep backing up to stay ahead of the quickly moving flow. From the air, we get a great view of lava emerging from tubes up higher on the slope. Newly formed braided channels crisscross the area, making an approach on foot nearly impossible. Downslope, the lava changes to ah, and big levees are building as discarded rubble is pushed to the side. The flow front rumbles slowly forward, forming a broad fan of ah. By climbing onto a levee, I can film one of these channels as it crusts over. The crust grows in from the sides until the open center gets clogged with wrinkles of floating crust. Here the crust is almost completely sealed over the channel, the first step in making a new lava tube. These new channels eventually made their way to the coast and entered the ocean not far from the old entry. Both entries remain active into October.